The debris field stretched endlessly beneath the artificial gravity generators of New Cygnus Station, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams floating in the cold vacuum. Jasper Kane adjusted his breathing mask and stepped carefully over a piece of hull plating that had once been painted bright yellow, now scorched black and riddled with micrometeorite holes. 6 hours into his shift, the salvage inspector had already cataloged 43 pieces of recoverable tech from the latest batch of derelict spacecraft. It's corporate mining vessels mostly, their crews long evacuated before the ships were abandoned to drift in the asteroid belt. It was mindless work that paid just enough to keep him in a tiny quarters pod and fed on station rations. The metallic ping of his scanner drew his attention to a cluster of wreckage near the far edge of Sector 7, according to his readout. There was still an active power signature coming from inside what looked like the remains of a passenger transport. Jasper frowned. Active power meant potential salvage bonuses, but it also meant potential danger. He made his way through the maze of floating debris, using his magnetic boots to anchor himself to larger pieces when needed. The transport's hull had been split open like a flower, its interior exposed to space. Through the breach, he could see scattered personal belongings drifting in the zero-gravity clothing. Data pads, a child's stuffed animal with one arm missing. Then he saw her. She was wedged between two collapsed bulkheads, wearing what might have once been elegant robes, but now hung in tatters around her slight frame. Her skin had a translucent quality that caught the station's work lights, shifting between pale blue and silver, depending on the angle. Delicate markings traced patterns along her visible arms and face, not tattoos, but something that seemed to pulse faintly with its own inner light. Jasper's breath caught in his throat. Ethereal. He'd only seen pictures in the underground news feeds, stories about the refugee crisis from the Outer Rim territories. Corporate expansion had destroyed their homeworld 6 months ago. Survivors were scattered across the galaxy with nowhere to go. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. Still alive, but barely. Every regulation in the station handbook screamed at him to call it in immediately. Harboring unregistered aliens was a serious crime, punishable by imprisonment, or worse. The smart thing would be to mark her location and let the authorities handle it. Instead, he found himself activating his suit's emergency beacon not to call for help, but to disable the tracking function that would record his movements for the next hour. A trick he'd learned from other salvagers, who occasionally bent the rules. Jasper carefully extracted the emergency medical kit from his belt and activated the portable atmosphere generator. The small device created a bubble of breathable air around them both, allowing him to remove his helmet. The woman's eyes fluttered open at the sound, the most beautiful shade of violet he'd ever seen, but dulled with pain and dehydration. "Hey," he said softly, not sure if she could understand human speech. "You're going to be okay." She tried to speak, but only managed a hoarse whisper in a language he didn't recognize. Then in broken standard, "Please, ... Jasper didn't hesitate. He unscrewed his personal water ration, supposed to last him the next 8 hours, and carefully helped her drink. She consumed it desperately, violet tears streaming down her cheeks as the liquid touched her cracked lips. "Thank you," she managed, her accent making the words sound like music. "I am ... Vesa." "Jasper," he replied, already working to free her from the wreckage. "We need to get you out of here." As he helped her stand, Vesa's legs buckled. The bio readings on his scanner showed severe malnutrition and dehydration. Without proper care, she wouldn't last another day. "My ship," she whispered, gesturing weakly at the destroyed transport. "My family ... Jasper followed her gaze and saw the truth in the way her shoulders sagged. She was alone, the only survivor. The journey back to the station took 20 minutes, with Vesa leaning heavily on his arm. They avoided the main docking bays, using maintenance tunnels that led directly to the worker quarters. Jasper's small living space, barely larger than a storage closet, had never felt more cramped, but it was private. He helped her to his narrow bunk and activated the room's basic medical scanner. The readings made him wince. She was in worse shape than he'd realized. "Why?" Vesa asked, her violet eyes studying his face.
"Why?"
Jasper looked at her, this fragile being from a destroyed world, asking him to explain basic decency. "Because everyone deserves a chance to live," he said simply. Outside, the station continued its relentless rotation, grinding through another shift cycle. But inside the small room, something had changed. Jasper Kane, salvage inspector and keeper of regulations, had just chosen to save a life instead of following orders. Neither of them would ever be the same. 3 days passed in careful routine. Jasper would leave for his salvage shifts, returning to find Vesa slightly stronger each time. She had begun moving around the small quarters, though she still tired easily. Her translucent skin had regained some of its natural luminescence, the silver markings along her arms pulsing with a soft, steady rhythm that seemed to match her heartbeat. On the 4th morning, Jasper brought someone with him. "This is Dr. Mira Santos," he said quietly, watching Vesa retreat to the far corner of the room. "She can help." Dr. Santos was a compact woman with kind eyes and graying hair, pulled back in a practical bun. She moved slowly, keeping her hands visible as she approached. "I've treated your people before," she said in accented standard. "Off. The books? You're safe with me." Vesa's violet eyes darted between them. "Your people know of Etherians?" "Some do," Santos replied, unpacking a medical scanner that looked far more advanced than the basic station equipment. "Your kind has been trickling through the outer stations for months. Most don't make it this far." She paused, meeting Vesa's gaze. "You're lucky Jasper found you." Examination revealed the extent of Vesa's ordeal: severe malnutrition, dehydration, and what Santos called grief sickness, a condition she'd observed in other refugees who had lost their entire families. "Your homeworld," Santos said gently. "Can you tell us what happened?" Vesa was quiet for so long that Jasper thought she might not answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she began to speak. "Nathise was beautiful," she said, "the silver markings on her skin brightening as she remembered. Crystal spires reaching toward 3 moons. Gardens that sang with the wind." Her expression darkened. "Then the Hegemony Corporation arrived. They said they needed our rare minerals for their expansion. When the council refused to sell our sacred sites, she didn't need to finish. Jasper had seen the newsfeed's entire world stripped bare by corporate mining operations. Populations relocated or eliminated as obstacles to progress. The attack ships came at dawn," Vesa continued. "We had no military, no weapons of war. Within hours, the spires were falling. The gardens. They burned everything." Her voice broke. "I was visiting my cousin on one of the outer settlements. By the time I returned, there was nothing left but ash." Santos placed a gentle hand on Vesa's shoulder. "How did you escape?" "A trader took pity on me, said he could get me to the core. Worlds to safety. But his ship was attacked by pirates. I was the only survivor when it crashed in your debris field." Jasper felt a cold anger building in his chest. The Hegemony Corporation had stations throughout this sector, including significant holdings on New Cygnus. Vesa's people weren't just refugees. They were the victims of genocide, carried out by entities with offices just a few levels above his quarters. "There's something else," Santos said, studying her scanner readings.
"All your cellular structure.
"It's remarkable. Your body is literally repairing itself at an accelerated rate. The luminescence in your markings, it's connected to some kind of bio-regenerative process." Vesa looked confused. "All Etherians heal quickly. It is not unusual." "It is to us," Santos replied with a slight smile. "Your people might hold the key to advances in medical science that could help countless species." Over the following days, Vesa's strength continued to return. She began teaching Jasper words in her musical language, while he helped her improve her standard. In the evenings, she would tell stories of Nethazit's floating cities, its harmony with nature, the way her people could communicate through the patterns of light in their skin. "We were philosophers and artists," she explained one night as they shared a simple meal. "We believed that all consciousness was connected, that harming another being was harming yourself." She gestured at her glowing markings. "These patterns, they show our emotions, our health, our connections to others. We could never lie to each other." "What do they show now?" Jasper asked quietly. Vesa looked down at her arms where the silver lines pulsed with a warm, steady light. Gratitude, she said simply, and something I did not expect to feel again, hope. But even as their bond deepened, danger was approaching. Word was spreading through the station's underground networks about the Etherean refugee in the salvage workers' quarters. And not all the attention was friendly. Security Chief Braxton Torres was not a man who believed in coincidences. When 3 separate informants mentioned an unregistered alien in Sector 12, he decided to investigate personally. Torres had built his career on understanding the station's black market economy. Weapons, stolen tech, and information all flowed through channels he either controlled or monitored. But the most profitable trade was in sentient beings, refugees, escaped slaves, political dissidents. The Outer Rim territories were full of desperate people willing to work for nothing. Certain corporations paid very well for that kind of labor. He found Jasper Kane's quarters easily enough. The man had no history of infractions, no suspicious associations. A model citizen, which made him either very innocent or very careful. The knock came just as Vesa was showing Jasper how Etherean children learned to control their bioluminescence. She immediately dimmed her markings and moved away from the door. Jasper Kane? Torres called through the metal barrier. Security inspection, open up. Jasper's heart hammered as he activated the door. Torres was a large man with dead eyes and the kind of smile that never reached above his mouth. 2 junior officers flanked him. Mind if we come in? Torres asked, already stepping inside. Routine check for contraband. The quarters were tiny enough that Torres could see everything in a single glance. Vesa sat on the bunk, wearing one of Jasper's work shirts, her alien features impossible to hide. Well, Torres said softly. What do we have here? She's registered. Jasper lied smoothly. Temporary work visa. Is she now? Torres approached Vesa, who kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Funny thing about the registration database, I just checked it. No record of any Etherean refugees being processed through New Cygnus in the past 6 months. Jasper's mouth went dry. There must be some mistake. The only mistake here is thinking you could hide her from me. Torres crouched in front of Vesa. Do you know what happens to unregistered aliens on this station, sweetheart? Vesa's markings flared briefly with what Jasper now recognized as fear, then went completely dark. They get processed through the labor allocation system, Torres continued conversationally. Sent to mining colonies, agricultural worlds, sometimes the pleasure districts, if they're lucky enough to be attractive. The pay is nothing, but room and board are provided. It's really quite generous. She's under my protection, Jasper said, his voice steadier than he felt. Torres stood and laughed. Protection? You're a salvage inspector, Kane. You have no authority here. He gestured to his officers. Take her. Wait, the voice came from behind them. Dr. Santos stood in the doorway, her medical bag in one hand and a data pad in the other. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, Chief Torres. Torres frowned. Dr. Santos, what are you doing here? Medical consultation, she replied calmly. This young lady has been undergoing treatment for xenobiological contamination syndrome. Highly contagious among humans who lack proper immunization. She held up the data pad. I have the full medical protocols right here. It was a complete fabrication, but Santos delivered it with such professional authority that Torres actually took a step back. Contamination syndrome? One of the junior officers asked nervously. Oh yes, Santos continued.
Yes.
Respiratory infection, neural inflammation, potential genetic damage. I'm surprised you weren't notified through security channels. The quarantine order should have been distributed this morning. Torres's eyes narrowed. He wasn't stupid enough to believe the story completely, but he also wasn't willing to risk his health on a bluff. How long is this quarantine supposed to last? Standard protocol is 14 days minimum. Could be longer if her condition doesn't stabilize. For a long moment, Torres studied all 3 of them. Then he smiled that empty smile again. 14 days after that, if she's not properly registered and processed, I'll be back. And next time, a little medical theater won't protect her. After they left, Vesa finally allowed her markings to brighten again. The patterns showed pure terror, mixed with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered to Santos. "Don't thank me yet," the doctor replied grimly. "Torres isn't going to let this go. We've bought you time, but not much." That night, as Vesa slept fitfully on the narrow bunk, Jasper and Santos sat at his small table and planned. "There are others," Santos said quietly. "Refugees hiding throughout the station. Most of them are in worse situations than Veso forced. Labor, illegal contracts, worse things. Torres knows about all of it, and he profits from it. Then why doesn't anyone stop him? Because the station administration doesn't care, and the ones who do care don't have enough power to act." Santos paused. "But there might be another way." She told him about rumors she'd heard, an underground network that helped aliens escape persecution, smugglers and sympathizers who moved refugees to safer territories. It was dangerous, probably. Illegal, and definitely their best chance. "How do we contact them?" Jasper asked. Santos smiled grimly. "We don't. If we're lucky, they'll contact us." The next morning brought their answer in an unexpected way. Jasper was returning from his salvage shift when he heard screaming from the residential sector. A crowd had gathered around one of the maintenance areas, where a young human child had fallen through a weakened grate into the power coupling chamber below. The boy was trapped, conscious and bleeding, with electrical conduits sparking dangerously. Close to his head, station maintenance said it would take hours to shut down the power grid safely. "He'll be dead by then," someone shouted. That's when Vesa stepped forward. Her markings blazed with silver light as she lowered herself into the chamber. Jasper watched in amazement as she placed her hands on the boy's injuries, her bioluminescence intensifying until both she and the child were wreathed in healing radiance. The boy's wounds closed. His breathing steadied. Within minutes, he was conscious and crying for his mother. The crowd fell silent as Vesa lifted him to safety, her alien nature now impossible to hide. But instead of fear or hatred, Jasper saw something else in their faces: wonder. And the dawning realization that this strange being had just saved a child's life. Torres arrived minutes later. The damage was already done. Too many witnesses had seen Vesa's healing abilities. Word would spread throughout the station within hours. 14 days, Torres reminded Jasper as the crowd dispersed. "The clock is still ticking." But as they walked back to the quarters, Jasper noticed something new. People nodded to them in the corridors. A vendor pressed a package of food into Vesa's hands. "Kay." An elderly woman touched her arm gently and whispered what sounded like a blessing. The station's attitude toward Vesa was beginning to change. The question was whether it would change fast enough to save her. The message came 3 days later, slipped under Jasper's door during the night shift change. Just a small piece of paper with coordinates and a time: Bay 94, maintenance level, 0200 hours. Jasper found Dr. Santos already waiting in the dimly lit storage area, along with 2 people he didn't recognize. A tall, an angular woman with intricate tattoos covering her dark skin, a younger man whose nervous energy filled the cramped space. "You must be Kane," the woman said, extending her hand. "Captain Zora Blackwood. I understand you've been harboring a very special refugee." Jasper shook her hand cautiously. "Depends on who's asking." Blackwood smiled. "By someone who's been moving people to safety for the past 3 years. Your Etherian friend isn't the first, and she won't be the last." The nervous young man stepped forward. "I'm Dex Holloway, communications specialist." He gestured at a portable scanner he was carrying. "I've been monitoring station security frequencies. Torres has requests in 3 different hegemony subsidiaries about acquiring an Etherian test subject." The word acquisition was used specifically. "They want to study her healing abilities," Santa said grimly. "Turn her into a lab rat." "Over my dead body," Jasper replied. "That might be what it comes to," Blackwood warned. "But there are alternatives. My organization runs ships through the outer territories. We can get Vesa to the independent systems, where refugee status actually means something."
"What's the
catch?" Blackwood exchanged glances with her companions. "We're planning something bigger, a mass evacuation. There are 47 unregistered aliens currently hiding on New Cygnus. Most are in situations far worse than your friends.
If we can get them all out at once. Torres's entire operation collapses, Jasper finished. Exactly. But it requires coordination, timing, and someone on the inside with access to the transport.
Scheduling systems. Dex pulled up a holographic display from his scanner. The station's main transport hub processes all incoming and outgoing traffic. If we can override the scheduling system for just 20 minutes, we can launch multiple ships simultaneously. By the time security realizes what's happening, we'll be long gone. Where do I fit in? Jasper asked, though he was beginning to suspect. Salvage operations have priority access to the transport hub, Blackwood explained. Your authorization. Codes can get us inside. Question is whether you're willing to throw away your life here for people you don't even know. Jasper thought about Vesa, about the child she'd saved, about the way people had started looking at her with hope instead of fear. What do you need me to do? The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Dex would create a system malfunction that would require a manual override of the transport schedules. Jasper's codes would provide access to the hub's main control room during the maintenance window. Meanwhile, Blackwood would coordinate the movement of all 47 refugees to the staging area. The ships are already in position, she explained, disguised as routine supply transports. Once we're clear of station airspace, we jump to hyperspace and scatter to different systems. What about Torres? Santos asked. That's where your Etherean friend comes in, Blackwood replied. Her healing demonstration a few days ago created quite a stir. Half the station is calling her a miracle worker. The other half thinks she's dangerous. Torres is trying to exploit both reactions. She showed them intercepted communications between Torres and his corporate contacts. Plans to stage an incident that would justify taking Vesa into custody for public safety. Once they had her, she would disappear into the hegemony's research facilities. The timeline has accelerated, Blackwood said. We move tomorrow night, or we lose her forever. The next evening, Vesa sat quietly as Jasper explained what they were planning. Her markings shifted through complex patterns: fear, hope, gratitude, and something else he couldn't identify. You risk everything for strangers? She said finally. They're not strangers. They're people who need help, just like you did. She reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was warm, and he could feel a faint tingling where their fingers met. On Nethes, we believed that all consciousness was connected, that helping others was helping yourself. I see now that humans can understand this truth as well. Operation began at exactly 0200 hours. Dex triggered the system malfunction from his hidden location in the communications center. Jasper used his codes to access the transport hub, where Blackwood was waiting with a dozen refugees, including 3 more Ethereans and several other species he didn't recognize. Where's Santos? He asked. Medical emergency on level 7, Blackwood replied tersely. Torres staged his incident early. Your friend is in the detention center. Jasper's blood ran cold. We have to get her. We stick to the plan. My people are handling it. But even as she spoke, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Security alerts echoed through the corridors, and heavy footsteps pounded toward their location. Dex. They found us. Dex's voice crackled through the cum. Torres is mobilizing everything he's got. Blackwood cursed and started herding refugees toward the transport ships. Change of plans. Leave now with whoever we can save. It's not without Vesa, Jasper said firmly. She's already dead, Kane. Don't throw away 46 other lives for one person. But Jasper was already running, leaving the transport hub and racing through maintenance corridors toward the detention center. Behind him, he could hear ships launching and security forces shouting orders. The detention center was heavily guarded, but Santos had taught him the medical override codes that would open emergency locks. He found Vesa in a holding cell, unconscious and hooked to monitoring equipment that was recording her bioluminescent patterns. Jasper, she whispered as he freed her from the restraints. We're getting you out of here. They made it halfway to the transport hub before Torres found them. The security chief stood in their path with a squad of armed officers, his dead eyes filled with rage. End of the line, Kane. You've cost me a very profitable operation. Good, Jasper replied, helping Vesa stay upright. Shoot them both, Torres ordered. That's when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, casting everything in red shadows. In the confusion, a figure emerged from the darkness. Blackwood, armed and dangerous. This way, she shouted, laying down covering fire as they fled. They reached the last transport ship, just as station security cordoned off the entire hub. Blackwood sealed the hatch and hit the launch controls in one smooth motion. Hold on, she warned. The ship lifted off with bone-jarring acceleration, racing toward the edge of station space. Behind them, Jasper could see other transports scattering in different directions, carrying their precious cargo to safety. Jump coordinates locked in, the pilot called back. Do it. Reality twisted around them as they entered hyperspace, leaving New Cygnus Station far behind. 6 months later, Jasper stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, watching supply ships dock at the facility he and Vesa had helped design. What had started as an abandoned mining platform in neutral space had become something unprecedented, a sanctuary for refugees from across the galaxy. The transformation hadn't been easy. It had required negotiations with 3 different governments, massive fundraising efforts, and the support of people like Ambassador Thane Morrison, whose investigation into the New Cygnus incident had exposed Torres' trafficking operation and led to significant reforms in refugee policy. The morning briefing is ready, Vesa said, appearing at his side with the datapad in her hands. Her markings glowed with warm contentment. A pattern he'd learned meant she was truly happy. She had changed in the months since their escape. Role as liaison between the various refugee communities had given her purpose beyond mere survival. The Etherean healing abilities that Torres had wanted to exploit now saved lives daily in Haven's medical centers. How many new arrivals today? Jasper asked, taking the pad. 17. Mostly Alterans, fleeing the labor conscription on their homeworld. Dr. Santos is already setting up medical screenings. Santos had requested transfer to Haven as soon as Morrison's reforms made it legal. She now ran the station's medical facilities, with a staff that included healers from a dozen different species, sharing knowledge that was revolutionizing interspecies medicine. And the funding situation? Ambassador Morrison's latest presentation to the Core World Council was approved. We have enough resources to expand the residential section and add 2 more docking bays. Morrison had become an unlikely ally, using the scandal around New Cygnus to build support for refugee rights throughout human space. His diplomatic corps now included several non-human species, with Vesa serving as an informal cultural advisor. There's something else, Vesa said, her markings shifting to show nervous excitement. A message came in from the outer rim.
Out.
Ships carrying Etherean survivors. They heard about Haven through the refugee network and want to know if... Of course, Jasper said immediately, "We'll make room." She smiled, the bioluminescent patterns on her skin brightening. After months of believing she was the last of her kind, Vesa would soon be reunited with other survivors of Nethys. Going to be a ceremony, she continued. When they arrive, remembrance for those we lost, and a celebration for those who survived. Will you speak at it? Jasper looked out at the bustling station beings from dozens of worlds working together, children of various species playing in the common areas, former enemies sharing meals and stories. I'm not good at speeches. You don't need to be good at them. You just need to speak from your heart. Later that evening, they walked through Haven's central plaza, where vendors from across the galaxy sold food, crafts, and stories from there. Homeworlds. A group of young Alterans were teaching human children a traditional dance while nearby. Elderly Ethereans shared bioluminescent patterns with fascinated onlookers. I never imagined anything like this was possible, Vesa said. Watching a mixed group of refugees collaborate on a mural depicting their various homeworlds? Neither did I, Jasper admitted. 6 months ago, I was just trying to survive another day in the salvage yards. And now? He looked at her, at the station they'd built together, at the lives they'd helped save. Now I'm trying to help everyone else do the same. They paused at a memorial wall where the names of destroyed worlds were etched in multiple languages and writing systems. Nethys was there, along with dozens of other civilizations lost to corporate greed, military conquest, or simple neglect. Sometimes I dream about home, Vesa said softly. The crystal spires, the singing gardens. Then I wake up and remember they're gone forever. Jasper took her hand, feeling the familiar tingle of her bioelectric field. But the people who remember, them aren't gone. As long as they're alive, something of those worlds survives too. Her markings flowed through shades of silver and gold patterns he'd learned represented love, hope, and the deep connection her people felt with all living things. On Nethys, we believe that consciousness never truly dies, she said. That every act of kindness, every choice to help instead of harm, becomes part of the great web that connects all beings. I think Haven is proof of that truth. Above them, the station's artificial sky displayed the stars of local space points of light, representing billions of worlds. Billions of possibilities. Some held suffering and injustice, but others, like Haven, represented hope. The Etherian ships will arrive tomorrow, Vesa said, and after that, there will be others. Refugees, survivors, people looking for a place where they can be safe and free. And we'll make room for all of them, Jasper replied. As they stood together in the plaza, surrounded by the bustling life of the station they'd helped create, Jasper reflected on how much had changed since that day he'd found Vesa dying in the debris field. He'd been a man content with solitude, following regulations, avoiding complications. Now he was part of something larger, a community built on the radical idea that all conscious beings deserved dignity, safety, and the chance to build something better from the ashes of what they'd lost. The memorial wall caught the light from passing ships, and for a moment, the names of the dead seemed to glow with their own inner radiance. Jasper squeezed Vesa's hand and felt her squeeze back, her bioluminescent markings pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new refugees, new possibilities. But tonight, in this moment, they had built something worth fighting for. A place where stars could collide with hearts, where different species could find common ground, and where the simple act of helping a stranger could transform the galaxy. The station hummed around them, alive with hope and the endless potential of conscious beings choosing compassion over cruelty. And in the depths of space, more ships were already heading toward Haven, carrying their own stories of loss and dreams of redemption. The refugee crisis that had started with corporate greed and systematic oppression was slowly being answered by something unprecedented network of sanctuary stations spreading throughout the galaxy. Each one proof that even in the darkest times, beings could choose to care for one another. Jasper and Vesa had started with a single act of kindness. In a salvage yard, they were part of a movement that spanned star systems, offering hope to anyone who needed it. And this was only the beginning.